I see people in the comments already. We have a lot of yelling happening, and I want to start off right now by telling y'all, please, please, please don't send your super chats through this stream because I'm dialed in. I dial in on these game-by-game recaps, okay? I'm looking at my screen only. I'm thinking about numbers. It's like the Zach Galifianakis shit going on. That's what's happening all the time. I don't want to take your money. So please, if someone drops a super chat in there, it's going on my margarita fund, and you will not get any value. So all the people that are already in here, just let the other people know not to do so, okay? And also let them know to go hit this line on Underdog right now. Because tonight's game, we've got Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers playing against Las Vegas. Now, we just heard that Aaron Jones may be out for this one. There's a strong likelihood that he is out. Devontae Adams, strong likelihood that he's in. All that doesn't matter because there's an absolute free square of Jordan Love. Someone's dropping super chats. I'm going to assume you're fucking with me already. Super chat, don't do it. Jordan Love, 0.5 total yard square. Do it, all right? You got free money on Underdog right now. Free money. Go sign up with promo code BDGE. And guess what will happen? Whatever you throw down onto the platform, underdogfantasy.com, link down below in the description, they're going to double it all the way up to $500. So if it's your first time on Underdog, you put $500 on there, guess what? You're going to have $1,000 on there to play with, and they've started you off with an absolute free square. Jordan Love, 0.5. We're going to go through every single game of the weekend starting Thursday Night Football. Chicago Bears at the Washington Commanders. We're just going to sit here and chill for a second while people start to pile in. How art we? How art thou? How's everybody doing out here? Let's check the chat. There you go. He starts with a fucking super chat. What's up, Jonathan? Dialed. Dial in. Right here. It's permanent. What up, Marlon? What's up, fam? Cute son. Very cute. This is just not true. DJ Moore, your favorite wide receiver. It's not true considering my favorite wide receiver is Josh Reynolds. Just couldn't be. Just couldn't be me. Is it gray sweatpants season? Nah, I stopped doing that childish shit a couple of years ago. First live, man. All the team's content tucked in and dialed. You love to see it. Your first live. How come people really never get into the lives, man? Just turn notifications on. There's a little bell underneath the video. There's a little bell underneath the video. You click it, and then it'll let you know when we go live. You'll get like 3 notifications a week. It ain't that big of a deal. Grow up. Ritter back. Facts. Facts. Ritter never really left. He never actually left. Y'all left him for dead, but he never left. He's just this year's Geno Smith. Y'all need to grow up. Woo! Let's hop into the games. Let me move my camera. Bang, so you can see my plaque, my plaqueth. So we're going to go game by game as we always do. Just talk through, just hang out, just chill. And I just X'd out of the comments, so do not drop super chats. I will not be engaging with any of y'all. Y'all pieces of shit. If you're here, you're a piece of shit. So Justin Fields back. Super back. I actually just sent out a trade offer today to swap Fields for Anthony Richardson in a dynasty league, but that's neither here nor here. Chicago, biggest takeaways. Fields looks like he very, very, very well might be okay. A lot of the times the way I want to think about this is, right, we're still relatively in the beginning parts of the season, right? We're 5 weeks in, which is, I don't know, what, 28% of the season, right? So that's still early. We're still talking about the first quarter, the first third of the season. So what I would try to do is say, like, what if Justin Fields' previous 2 games were his first 2 games? The way we'd be looking at him for the rest of the season would be very differently. We'd have a lot more positive mindset on him, and we'd continue to be like, he's fine. Just continue to start him. You know what I mean? So I feel optimistic about Fields, but I also think when he plays against, like, really good teams, they're probably still going to struggle. But DJ Moore's an every week starter. In this game, though, we had a couple injuries in the backfield. All right, so Khalil Herbert, I believe, suffered a high ankle sprain. That's going to keep him out for a minute, right? Probably 2 weeks minimum, more so likely up to like 3 to 4 weeks. We've seen that be a problem for a lot of running backs already this year. So if you got Khalil Herbert, problematic. Roschon Johnson, I also believe, left this game with a concussion. More often than not, players who leave with a concussion end up missing the next week. I think it's possible. When do they play again? Oh, well, they do have extra time, obviously, because they were the Thursday night game. So he's got a few extra days to clear concussion protocol. So I'd put his percentage a little bit higher up. And if that's the case, Roschon probably becomes the guy in the backfield against the Minnesota Vikings, which is definitely a team that you could produce some fantasy points against. So I'd probably be looking at like a low-end RB2 for Roschon Johnson. I think they'll probably activate Deonta Foreman, who's been a healthy scratch all these weeks. So that's really like where I'd be looking right now. I think if Roschon also misses this game, Deonta Foreman will just kind of be thrown into a lot of work, and he's a good enough NFL back that I think he can put up like RB2 numbers for you for a single game. So just something to keep an eye on. But Khalil Herbert will probably be out for multiple weeks. On the flip side, nothing great to take away here. Logan Thomas, though, has really been balling a little bit, man. Logan Thomas is without a doubt. I should have been a little bit more privy to this, because he started to run like 80-85% of the routes in this offense, and he's becoming almost like the Travis Kelce in Bieniemy's Chiefs experience offense here. So Logan Thomas probably needs to be heavily targeted on the waiver wire if he is still available for you, but he's put together back-to-back good games, so might not be super highly available. Brian Robinson had a down game, but still the only running back with a carry there, so we're not worried about him. Let's move on to the next game. We've got the London game up bright and early. I'm so sick of these fucking games, man. They stink so bad until like the ending sometimes. Most of the time they just stink. The product has gotten a little bit better, I will say. Here's I think about these London games, bro, and the way I think about it is it feels like every game the product is so bad. Like there's so many passionate English fans that go out to the stadium and they pack the stadium. In my mind, I'm watching it and I'm like, man, I watch it because I have like, we in America have an addiction to it. But if this was my first time watching this game, for all the shit that we give soccer, we're like, oh, this is boring, like nothing ever happens. Unbiasedly, like fucking objectively, that's how I would feel if I was watching these London games for the first time. If this is the first football experience I had, like I imagine diehard NFL fans. And if anyone out there is from England and understands what I'm saying, or went to the game or has been to any of these games, let me know if I'm way off base here. But like if I was out in London, right, and I'm a diehard NFL fan, and this is the first game, you know, obviously the ending ended up being really, really cool, but you guys get the point of what I'm trying to say here. If I took my fiance or girlfriend or like anyone in my family or my friends, and I'm like, dude, don't worry, it's really cool, to these games, just the shitty play. It's like 3 and outs, batted passes, flags, penalties, like nonstop with these games, man. It's crazy. It just feels like such a terrible fucking experience for people who are probably getting introduced to the game for the first time, man. I don't know. The ending was cool, but like up until that point, Jacksonville kind of feel like they washed Buffalo a little bit. They pretty much controlled the game outside of the touchdown that Buffalo had in the second quarter. I do think the narrative of Jacksonville being there for 2 weeks, Buffalo having to travel over. Apparently, they traveled over on like Friday. They didn't or it was either Thursday night or Friday, and they didn't have a lot of time to like get situated. I don't know. There's a lot of weird shit going on. Roger Goodell came out and said they were kind of like experimenting to see how big of a disadvantage the team would have when another team was there for 2 weeks. So like, I'm not really chalking this up as a down game for Buffalo because at the end of the day, the stats were there to be had. But from a team standpoint. But Trevor Lawrence played fucking phenomenal again. This was something I relayed. Like, people were really, really down on him after the first few weeks. But again, he had the second highest passing grade per PFF going into this week, which is crazy, but only because this team cannot stop dropping passes. Their receivers have had bricks for hands. But they showed up this week, 7 for 122 for Ridley, 6 for 78 for Christian Kirk. Evan Ingram kind of had his first down game, but Travis Etienne went boom, boom, blasted the fuck off. I think this is just who he is. He's going to have really big games, but he's got a really solid floor. Like, sure, there are going to be games where, like, Tank gets a goal line carry or Tank catches 2 passes or something like that. But it's very, very clear that Etienne's their most talented player in the backfield. And yeah, sometimes he'll go 19 for 70 and not really put up fantasy games, but that kind of feels like a really nice floor to have at this point. So ETN's in every week, running back 1 in my mind. Ridley, you keep firing up. Kirk, you keep firing up. Evan Ingram, you keep firing up. Zay Jones, first game back, looked relatively good. Had a really nice touchdown grab. I think he'll continue to get more and more involved. So if he was dropped, he'd be someone that I would probably spend some real fab on to throw into my flex plays, especially throughout these bye weeks. Speaking of, actually, let's clear out the Bills, and then we'll talk about the bye weeks for next week, because this was a tough week. I had a super flex league. I had the most insane. Actually, hold on. Let me finish with Buffalo. Everybody, fucking settle down. Buffalo. So really, the only takeaway here is Gabe Davis has been great. No one else is really startable in this passing game, but the backfield. This was just the Jacksonville defense just showed the fuck up, man. I'm not really holding James Cook too accountable for this one. I think he'll have much better days ahead. He put, back to back relatively strong fantasy games, so let's not just write him off after one game. They play the Giants next week. Yeah, so all y'all that are getting cute and being like James Cook is flopped, he's done, whatever. Yeah, let's see you sit his ass against the Giants. You're not gonna. So shut up. He'll be fine. NFL. We've got week 6 buys. Just the Packers and Steelers. So we're talking about Jordan Love. We're talking about Watson, Aaron Jones, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Luke Musgrave. We're talking about Kenny Pickles, but really George Pickens. Maybe after the bye they get Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth back. Maybe you guys should sit Najee Harris. Maybe you guys should do that. Texans and Falcons were so fucking back. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable how back Atlanta is. We now have an elite quarterback that can win games for us. It was the only piece we didn't have. The only thing we didn't have on our team was an elite thrower of the football. Plug that hole real quick. Plug that shit real quick. Huge walk-off win. Buddha won through the uprights. Atlanta 3-2, 3-0 at home. Desmond Ridder undefeated at home throughout his whole fucking career. Unbelievable, actually, stat. But we're back in 3-2. Feeling good about the Falcons again. It was good to see them let Ridder loose and him be able to not be an embarrassment. Someone tweeted out something that was being I forget a fan of what team it was, but it was so relatable. It was like being a fan of, what team is it? Being a fan of the Bears and having them continuously play on primetime felt like you were bringing a friend to a family party and you needed to let everybody know beforehand that he's probably going to do something really embarrassing. You know those moments where you bring a friend to a party and you're like, he's with me, but I can't be responsible for his actions. That's kind of what being a Falcons fan feels like a lot, but also probably a Bears fan because they're always on primetime. Back to the fucking point. Damian Pierce, a lot of touches again. CJ Stroud played relatively well. We do have a couple injuries here, so I think that probably led to a big game for Dalton Schultz. So Nico Collins was the dude that we were off this week because he was going to see a ton of shadow coverage from A.J. Terrell, which ended up happening. So he had a 3 for 39 game, but Collins will be fine. Get him back in your lineups next week. Tank Dell left with a concussion, so there's a real chance he misses next week, which is unfortunate. Robert Woods also left the game having 9 targets, but I want to say it was a rib injury. I could be wrong on that one, so don't quote me on that one. But I do think he actually returned. But there was a big chunk of the game where Woods and Dell missed, and that's kind of why Dalton Schultz blew up. But CJ Stroud still performed relatively well. Nothing really to take away on the wide receiver side for the Texans. Atlanta, I really don't think there's much to take away here either. Kyle Pitts finally had a good game, but I actually feel more comfortable with Jonnu Smith than I do with Kyle Pitts coming away from this game, to be completely fucking frank with you. I don't really care that Kyle Pitts had his first good game in 10 weeks. It's are we really trusting that going forward? I'm not. I started him in one dynasty league because I had to. It was him or fucking Tyler Conklin. Even that had a motherfucker. Think about it, But ended up starting him, had a big game. Drake London, these are the games he's going to have once every 2-3 weeks. Again, this is the point I keep trying to get across to people is predicting fantasy players on a week-to-week basis is goddamn near impossible. So figure out what you think of a player. Drake London, probably a wide receiver 3 right now, right? His end-of-season numbers will dictate that. on a week-to-week basis, he's not going to give you wide receiver 3 numbers every single week. But he'll have his 6 for 78, and he'll do that every other week or every 3 weeks, and at the end of the season, he'll be a wide receiver 3. So you figure out the way you feel about a player, and then you're never going to be able to predict consistency. But if you feel strongly about a player, leave him in your lineup because you'll get the good and the bad, and at the end of the year, he will equate to the player that hopefully you thought he was going to be. Obviously, you can, change your expectations as the season progresses and those things happen, but that's realistically that. I've been doing this. I've been playing this game long enough. I've been in the industry long enough that these trends they're impossible to predict on a week-to-week basis, but at the end of the year, typically they line up, and the fault that most people have is trying to predict when to start a player, when to sit a player, knowing how they're going to perform by year's end. And that's what we have for a lot of players. Bijan Robinson just continues to be an absolute god. Got in the end zone, did lose a big fumble, but didn't matter because Desmond Ritter's a king. Carolina, Detroit, the opposite of a king. Bryce Young. Imagine taking Bryce Young when Bijan's on the board. No, I'm not worried about Bryce Young at all. I'm not worried about it. Bryce will be fine. I don't really know what people expected from Bryce Young this year, but I had borderline 0 expectations for Bryce Young this year. Statistically, they have surrounded him with arguably the worst supporting cast in the NFL. It is terrible. He'll be fine long term. He's obviously not suitable for fantasy up to this point, but long term, I'm not worried about it. Miles Sanders is in my eyes very clearly still hampered. People keep pushing a narrative that Chuba's overtaking him. Miles Sanders got hurt last Friday, didn't practice at all Friday, didn't practice at all Saturday, and then looked terrible. Somehow was active on Sunday, looked terrible. Clearly less than 100%, and I still think he's dealing with that. So I think until we see full practices out of Miles Sanders, until we see a bounce-back performance, he's pretty much unstartable at this point. He's looked like an awful investment by the Carolina Panthers. Adam Thielen continues to fucking eat out here. DJ Chark luckily got some scraps there, got into the end zone, so he ended up having a good day. But Thielen is a must-start wide receiver week in and week out, as is most players on the Detroit Lions at this point. David Montgomery took over the entire backfield. Could have had an even much bigger day because Craig Reynolds came in there and mopped up some garbage time trash there. But 19 for 109, caught 2 passes for 20 yards, so he went for about $130 and a touchdown. Unsurprising with Jahmyr Gibbs out of the gate. Again, this was something that we kind of said all offseason. It's David Montgomery is going right into the Jamal Williams role, but Montgomery is probably objectively a much better back than Jamal Williams. You weren't getting 40-yard breakaway plays from Jamal Williams last year. You were getting 2 touchdown games, which were equally as good for fantasy, but Montgomery's a much better, pure running back than Jamal Williams has ever been in his career. So Montgomery's on his way to a monster season. Amon-Ra obviously missed this game. Jahmyr Gibbs missed this game. If Amon-Ra continues to miss time, Josh Reynolds is such a good flex play to have in your lineup. He's just been nothing but consistent outside of that one game where he was banged up the entire week in practice. Didn't catch a single pass. But other than that, he's been really, really, really good. Laporta just continues to be fucking goated. 3 for 47, gets in twice. I will say, man, I don't know. I hear a lot of discourse. I heard a lot of discourse this morning about Laporta being the tight end 1 in Dynasty. I'll say, Laporta's look very good. I do think he's getting a lot of, really, really nicely schemed up big plays to him. I don't want to take that away from him because he can make big plays, obviously. I'm not there. He was someone that I really, really liked going into the year. I actually went back yesterday and looked at, on May 2nd, right after the NFL draft, I put out a video that was must-draft rookies for your upcoming rookie draft. And the second-round players that I wanted you guys to target, it was Devon Achane and it was Sam Laporta back-to-back. Felt great about that. Big fan of Laporta. There are parts of me that feel when this team is at full strength, when Jahmyr Gibbs is there, when Amon-Ra St. Brown is there, when Jameson Williams is running a full complement of snaps, Laporta will consistently average around these, 3, 4, 5-ish targets a game, which in a really nice, high-powered offense, obviously gets you into scoring zones and scoring opportunities and stuff. And right now, the tight end landscape is so disgusting. But I will say I'm not going to be surprised if we see, at some point or another, a rough patch during Laporta's rookie year, because that's just how rookie tight ends work in fantasy. I'm not sure why I'm going out on a limb here talking shit about Laporta after a 2-touchdown game, but here we are. Jameson Williams, you want to talk about someone that needs to be talked about. is this man. No surprise, he was extremely limited. There was just no way you were getting him into your lineup this week. You should not have done that. He hasn't looked good, but I also think there's gonna come a ramp up period with him. Right, this offense is flowing. They are looking like such a legit team. They're looking so good that just throwing this X factor into the offense is going to take some time for that stuff to click. Like, they already know what works for them right now. It is pounding the ball with Dave Montgomery. It's getting into their playmakers, Laporta, all this kind of stuff. So throwing him in there, it's going to take a minute for him to be, for us to be able to at least see whether or not he's the guy. And it very well could just be him being a bust, man. Like, that happens. First-round rookie wide receivers, bust. Right where he was taken, that's where, like, John Ross went. Bust. There's a lot of first-round rookie wide receivers that have been busts. We've had a lot of hits over the last few years. We have had a lot of hits. But busts the years prior to that, man, we had those years of, like, the Laquan Treadwells and all those guys. We had so many bad for Corey Coleman's. We had, like, a stretch of 3 to 4 years of horrible first-round picks. And then all of a sudden, the pendulum has kind of swung back over the last couple of years. He might just be one of the few misses in that crop. So he's unstartable. I would still probably hold on to him. Like, you probably blew some fab on him last week. Let him get acquainted a little bit with the offense. Give it a couple more weeks, right? You were not expecting him to be back till week 6 anyways. They get the Bucs, they get the Ravens, then they get the Raiders, the Chargers, the Bears, right? Like, those are all beatable defenses. Let's see what he does in those games before we're making judgment calls on him. Titans, Colts. Nothing really to take away from the Titans thing. D-Hop had a vintage D-Hop performance. This was someone I was actually, like, kind of strongly suggesting to start in the Q&A that I did on Saturday, which is a private Q&A that you can only get access to if you are a Big Dog member. You can go sign up on bdge.co, which is where you'll get our waiver wire rankings for this week, which has fab suggestions. It's got whether or not we'd use the number 1 waiver wire on it. If you're in a normal waiver wire league, it'll have our weekly rankings, so any sit-start questions that you have can be answered by those weekly rankings. And then the private Q&A every Saturday where you can ask me any more in-depth, trade, sit-start, any of that sheesh type beat questions. But I was very much in on D-Hop. I mean, the Colts perimeter receivers or the Colts perimeter secondaries, it's not good. It's not good. They've been absolutely torn up, and that will be a point of attack for fantasy players going forward. Tajay Spears had a career game, of course, because I was playing against him in Deal or No Deal. I know y'all are on YouTube. Y'all love the YouTube content. You're here for fantasy information, that kind of shit. But we make a whole lot of TikTok content. We actually have the TikTok content that we make, we put up on YouTube for him as well. We do a ton of trivia. We do a ton of, like, games and shit, which I think a lot of you guys would probably enjoy, given that you're in this audience right now. So you can go check out the BDGE NFL Trivia channel. We do a Deal or No Deal type game every week where we pick, we go through the cases and shit, and we pick a fantasy wide receiver and a running back. And whoever loses has to do a punishment. This week's punishment, I have to go around in New York City with missing posters of myself, and I have to hand them out to people. And I'm going to wear a fake mustache while I'm doing it, and I'll see if people recognize me or not. And then we put up, like, vlogs of us doing it afterwards on that channel. So you can go follow us on TikTok. We're doing that type of content. Go follow us on that NFL Trivia channel. It's tough. It's a tough scene. This week I got to do reading mean comments because I lost last week. I just fucking take L's all day in Deal or No Deal because J-Mo he had one of the worst running backs on the board. Tajay Spears gets him fucking 92 points. Out of control. This shit sucks. Again, Spears needs to be owned. He's not, I'm not ready to duplicate this performance and put him in lineups anytime soon, but he looks like a really nice fantasy asset right now for Dynasty and just someone you want to hold on to because if something happens to Henry, Tajay Spears could be a really nice RB2 play for you. We've got a lot of news on the flip side. The Indianapolis Colts had their starting quarterback, Anthony Richardson, get hurt again. Starting to become a theme for him. He has a grade 3 AC sprain, which, from what I've seen in the reports, will hold him out likely a minimum of 4 weeks. He's going to see like 3 or 4 doctors, apparently, to get other opinions. That's not usually a good thing. You usually see other doctors and get other opinions when the first opinion is worse than you wanted it to be. Right? So a lot of the times you're like, okay, I got a low ankle sprain. You're not going to see specialists about it. So this is not a great injury to have. This is not the same injury that like Cam Newton had, so his career is not in jeopardy. It's just a really annoying injury for the time being. So I would plan to be without him for anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks right now, which is really unfortunate. But Gardner Minshew's been extremely serviceable. I think Minshew is a dude that you should definitely be targeting in Superflex leagues if he is available on your waiver wire because he could run this offense. And they all of a sudden just have a fucking phenomenal supporting cast because of Zach Moss. But the biggest talking point here, of course, is Jonathan Taylor's return. What do we make of this game? This was really unsurprising. I did not expect Zach Moss to get 80% of the touches again, but I did not expect Taylor to have a big fantasy day. They said they're going to ramp him up over the next month. I think the way that Zach Moss is playing right now is made damn sure that ramp up is going to be long. It's going to be like the runway in the last Fast and Furious movie. You know, they fight on the plane. They're like going to take off, but the fight scene's like a half hour long. It's like by that point, you didn't need to fly. Like you've already arrived at your destination from fucking driving on the runway. That's what it kind of feels like. I do think Taylor eventually takes over. I think the leash, what happens here is like the leash on Moss is almost non-existent. It's going to be really, really tight. Those are two completely different things. But you get what I'm saying. Like, as soon as Zach Moss has a bad day, that's kind of when the window opens, I think, for Jonathan Taylor. But I don't think that's going to be within the very, very near future. So we're probably looking right now still Zach Moss as the lead guy there, depending on because he's playing so great. I think this is just something we need to take week by week. Monitor reports really closely, see what the coaches are saying kind of thing, because they told us that they were going to ramp up Jonathan Taylor very slowly. So it seems like we can probably believe them in that. They've been pretty honest with us, I feel like, up to this point in the summer, whether it was talking about Anthony Richardson and all this kind of stuff, getting him right in as a starter. So I would look at Zach Moss probably going forward, at least on a week-to-week basis right now, as an RB2, and Jonathan Taylor is more of like a flex play, if that, until we see his workload increase and increase. I think by the end of the year, the way I was looking at it always was like, regardless of him coming back this week, we're probably expecting him from like week 8 on to be like the Jonathan Taylor that we were hoping when we drafted him. And honestly, I don't even know if he's going to get that like workhorse role back completely that we're, used to having Jonathan Taylor be in because of Zach Moss's play. It could be more of like a 68-32 split, right? Rather than like 78, 80, 82% Jonathan Taylor type thing. And is like, could you blame the Colts with how Zach fucking Moss is playing right now? Not really. Josh Downs continues to impress. I love all these little like rookie wide receivers this year, man. Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Tank Dell. They're fucking awesome. That's a great group of receivers. I think going to be successful for a long time in this league. If Gardner Minshew's the quarterback, like I'm not really downgrading any of the weapons here. So Giants Dolphins, yeah, let's downgrade everything about the Giants. There's literally nothing to talk about here except for Daniel Jones fucked his neck up again. His motherfucker needs a bichiotomy. He might play next week. I don't really know if Tyrod Taylor's in. That's not great either. Saquon should be back, but like, with the supporting cast in his first game back from an ankle sprain, I don't expect him to be full go. I don't expect him to, or a high ankle sprain. I don't expect him to be an 85% snap guy either. So I would tread cautiously with Saquon, at least week 1 back there. Terrible offensive line. The offense is going to be bad. Like, Saquon's probably like a low-end RB2 for me first week back. On the flip side, Miami kept doing his thing. Devon Achane is like, I think he's got to be the RB1 in fantasy right now. Almost positive of that. So they got the RB1. They got the wide receiver 1 in Tyreek Hill. I want to hit on something that I had not seen or heard anywhere in any of the like the recap pods that I consumed this week. Devon Achane might have hurt his ankle a little bit. So apparently, like in the fourth quarter, I think he got a carry, and then he limped off, and then he did not see another touch or get another snap for the rest of the game. No one that does like fantasy recaps mentioned it, but I saw multiple individual, like not copping off of each other, like multiple fantasy doctor creators talk about it in their own right. So that's something to very, very, very much keep an eye on. It could be a low ankle sprain. It could mean nothing at this point. It could not be a thing. But I did hear one of them mention the high ankle word. Not like guaranteeing anything, but it's definitely something to monitor right now. And that would obviously be devastating. Most of the time, the Twitter doctors are pretty good. They're usually at least within the ballpark when it comes to like having to be concerned about a player when they have video footage. If they could see the injury happen very clearly, they're usually pretty good at like ballparking what the injury is. So just keep an eye on Devon Achane and practice reports this week. Mostert continues to be a rock-solid RB2. He actually outsnapped Achane 60-40 in terms of percentage. Again, game script was always in their favor, so it's hard to get a read on what's true there. But Raheem Mostert, even if he's getting scraps in this backfield, like, does it matter? Them scraps are a four-course fucking meal. Scraps are a goddamn reservation at Carbone at this point, dude. Raheem Mostert has a bad day, goes for 80 and a touchdown. That's a weekly thing now. Devon Achane is just a god at this point, though. Jalen Waddle finally got into the end zone. 10 targets, led the team in targets. 5 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown. I think at this point, we just got to understand that, like, Hill is the alpha, and their running backs are so good and so explosive that there are going to be days like this with Waddle. So maybe we just kind of reframe our mindset of, okay, maybe he's not a wide receiver 1 and he's more of like a mid-wide receiver 2 going forward. I'm sure those weekly upside games are going to happen, and this kind of goes back to the point I was making where do you think Waddle fits in, knowing what we know right now objectively, okay, in a great passing offense, really talented guy with a good quarterback, etc. What do we think he does going forward rest of the season, and not try to predict on a week-by-week basis the consistency, right? I think he's going to be wide receiver 13 from now until the end of the year. Does not mean he's going to be wide receiver 13 every single week. He might go 4 for 32 next week and then go 7 for 172 and 2 touchdowns a week after that. Again, mindset. Grow up. I just want to tweet this out right quick. New big content episode just went live. If any of you guys are into the creator economy, media, social media, running a media business, any of those topics, me and my friend Jack do a podcast weekly about it. We have a separate YouTube channel for it. So that sheesh is live today, every Monday. Okay, I'll shut my mouth. Saints, Patriots, fucking Christ, I don't want to talk about this game. Takeaways here. Patriots are really bad. They might be the worst team in the NFL. Alvin Kamara, 25 touches a game, so he's right back to being a really, 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 really good fantasy option. So for those of y'all that took advantage of the 7th round, 8th round Alvin Kamara, you're feeling pretty damn good about it. He hasn't looked great just because his offense doesn't look great, but I do think with Derek Carr each week getting a little bit more and more healthy, that will help the offense overall run. Chris Olave also fucked up his ankle pregame, apparently. He was seen limping, which is why he probably had a really unproductive day. Got saved by a touchdown there, but something to monitor. Maybe it swells up afterwards. Probably, if I had to guess, a low ankle sprain. But I don't think people should be guessing about injuries, so I'm not actually going to – let's retract that statement from the record. Alvin Kamara is in every week RB1 right now. I do think there are inefficient days going forward, but if he's getting the goal line work, if he's getting targets, if he's getting 22 fucking carries, you feel damn good about putting him into your lineup. On the flip side, you don't feel good about a single player in this going into your lineup. Ramondre Stevenson, one of the TikToks that we made a few days ago was Stevenson was an easy sit this week. Saints defense looks good, but they have a better matchup against the Raiders next week. I'm obviously worried about Stevenson overall. He is splitting work with Zeke, and he just has not provided any explosive plays like he did last year. He's not catching a ton of balls like he did last year. He actually got out-targeted 4-2, but again, like game script was terrible, so hard to get a real read on it. But, I mean, we're 5 weeks into the season. He's not giving a shit. So I would be willing to give him one more chance against the Raiders. If he flops against the Raiders, then he's unstartable up to this point. Ravens Steelers. This was again, I mean, not a ton of takeaways here outside of what we already know. Jaylen Warren continues to look way better than Najee Harris, but it's kind of useless for fantasy until we actually get a shift in like the usage and the snap counts and all that stuff. On the flip side, the Baltimore Ravens, I heard a stat. The Baltimore Ravens had 7 drops in this game. The Baltimore passing offense had 7 drops in this game. That is just the 5th time, I think, over the last 4 years that a team had 7 drops in a game. It was an all-time bad performance from the weapons. They were dropping touchdowns. They were dropping first downs. They were dropping screen passes. There was nothing Lamar can do. The Steelers didn't win this game. The Ravens lost this game. I think it's very likely, and this was kind of like something I was warning people about, that one, just like this offense in Baltimore, Todd Monken and this weapons group is just overrated overall. Like Zay Flowers, really nice player. Yet to see real upside there. Mark Andrews, obviously great. But Aguilar is once again like one of their best weapons. Bateman's been fucking terrible, which is really surprising. I loved Bateman coming out of college, man. I can't believe how big of a whiff that was. Odell was an obvious fade this year. He's fucking like 35, way past his prime kind of thing. But I just think it's possible that this Ravens offense overall is just a little overrated. So I still think you could definitely start, and you should be starting Zay Flowers as a wide receiver 3, flex play going forward for sure. Mark Andrews obviously every week, but like there's not a lot else going on in this offense that you want a part of. Eagles Rams, there's a lot of pieces of both of these offenses that you absolutely want a part of. Jalen Hurts had a really nice throwing game. A.J. Brown went nuts. Dallas Goedert, of course, went nuts because you know what happens? When J-Mo had Tajay Spears as his running back for Deal or No Deal, let me mention he also had fucking Tyreek as his wide receiver. You know who I had? I had Devonta Smith and DeAndre Swift. I had Devonta fucking Smith. This is just going to be the case of this offense, man. Like, they have so many good playmakers that it's hard to imagine we're going to get consistency. That 8 for 117 and 1 touchdown could just as easily have been Devonta Smith's thing. So, again, this very much goes back to the sentiment I've been yelling about for this entire video, pretty much. I love Devonta Smith still. This game absolutely does not change the way I look at him as a player, as a fantasy player. I still think he's a top 15 wide receiver in fantasy, probably at worst. If you could trade him, if you could trade for him for lower than that value, that works for me. The 1 for 6 games are going to happen. He also had a pretty ugly drop. That would have been a huge play. 1 for 6 games are going to happen, but so are the 6 for 110 and a touchdown games. Don't stop trying to predict consistency. These games are 60 minutes long. People fall on the turf, and that changes the entirety of the game, like all that shit. DeAndre Swift still, at this point, a high-end RB1. Dallas Goedert, first bounce-back game. They made it a point to make sure to get him the ball. That first drive, I think he had like 5 catches. I wouldn't say uninvolved after that, but ton of his production on the first drive. So a little bit tough to imagine that's going to be like predictable going forward. I still like Dallas Goedert. I still think he's a guy that I'm starting in my lineup every single week if I have him, just because he has this in his range of outcomes every single week, where a lot of tight ends just don't even have that. So the Rams, Kyron Williams, we expected him to have a struggle against Philly. They're so fucking good against running backs. There's no chance he was really going to be efficient here. He's such a buy low opportunity if people are selling him. If people are worried that someone it's just week over week over week, he's taking 95% of the touches. His down weeks just happen against elite defenses. Anytime they get a good matchup, anytime they could use him, like, he goes bonkers. So Kyron Williams, buy the shit out of him if you can. The receiving game, one of the bigger storylines in all of fantasy this week. Can Puka keep puking with Cooper Kupp cupping? Answer is fucking yes. The answer has always been yes. You got to be a fucking idiot to have thought that these two weren't going to be able to work together. The biggest hit was obviously Tutu. That should not be surprising to anyone. Cooper Kupp came back and was Cooper Kupp. 12 targets, 8 catches, 118 yards. Feel fucking phenomenal about it. Next week, he might score 2 touchdowns, and Puka scores 0. That's going to continue flipping back and forth. But these two saw 23 of the 37 targets. That is 23 of 37. I don't know the math off the top of my head, but that's borderline fucking 65%. That's an insane number. And you know what's not insane? To think that that's going to continue going forward. It is such a condensed offense. Kupp is a wide receiver 1 again in your lineups. Puka is also a wide receiver 1. I think when you're ranking them going forward, it's probably Kupp top 5. It's probably Puka at worst, like the wide receiver 13 or 14 at worst. But he's in your lineup every week. They're both in your lineup every week because this is such a condensed funnel of targets. They play the Cardinals next week. They play the Steelers the week after that. They don't have a single matchup on here. Maybe the Browns here, maybe the Ravens a little bit, but like, oh man, like their second matchup against the Niners away is week 18. We're not even playing fantasy anymore. Good Lord. Just put them in your lineup and shut your mouth. Bengals told everybody to shut their mouths. Huge bounce back game. This was my golden slip. Every week also on TikTok, we fill out like a slip where we predict our favorite 3 spreads, our favorite over-under, best offense, best defense, and then the number 1 fantasy player at quarterback, running back, wide receiver. My golden spread this week was the Bengals -3. This was one of those things I would have put on what I want to do, the podcast theory, where everybody just runs with the narrative, and I thought the worry on the Bengals just got a little bit too far. I felt the bounce-back game for Joe Burrow felt somewhat obvious. And he went nuts. Him and Jamar Chase did what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase do. Jamar Chase, 19 targets, 15 catches, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns. Joe Burrow, is he back fully? Definitely not. But it was good to see him run a little bit. He had his first run of 10 yards, I think, in like – I heard the stat today. It was something crazy. It was his first run of 10 yards in like fucking 10 games or something like that. So this was huge for him. Do I think he's fully back? No. I still think he's definitely going to be hampered by the injury a little bit, and I still think it's going to hurt him a little bit, but I'm not worried to start Joe Burrow against the Seahawks next week. Not worried to start Jamar Chase against the Seahawks next week. Obviously. Joe Mixon continues to do exactly what Joe Mixon does, get fucking 30 touches and do nothing with it. Literally just the AFC, I was going to say the AFC North version of Najee Harris, but God, the whole AFC North is just, it's just fat Gus, Najee, Joe Mixon, fat running backs that just literally transform into a pile of dust once they touch the ball. Interesting strategies. On the flip side, we do have an injury to James Conner. He fucked his knee up, and in his place, Amari Demercado filled in. This was actually a dude that I touched on, again, in one of our TikTok videos. I posted a sell high video last week, and James Conner was the guy on it for me. I got lucky because he got hurt. But that's fantasy football for you. This dude was the backup to Kendre Miller at TCU. He also has a very interesting athletic profile. Let me move myself over here. So he's 5'10", 215 pounds. So he's got real size. 4.49 40-yard dash, 83rd percentile in weight adjusted speed score. Really nice agility score. Not great burst, but overall, like an athletic dude. James Conner. Let's see if we have any updates on James Conner. This is the play where James Conner injured his knee. The team will evaluate more this week. Jonathan Gannon says Conner is feeling okay. Week 6 status TBD. Conner has a significant history of right knee injuries. While we don't know details, I discuss some possibilities here. Yeah, so we don't really know. We don't know what the actual risk here is with James Conner. We don't know if it's serious. It could just be like a bruise or something, and he could be over it. But if not, Keontae Ingram has been out hurt a little bit. So Amari Demercado would be the guy I'd be looking to pick up in this backfield. They got Rondell Moore way more involved in the backfield, but that just feels that way because he had that 41-yard run. But this is the dude I'd be targeting. And he's probably available in Dynasty Leagues, which is really fucking incredible when you have a good pickup in the middle of the year in Dynasty Leagues because that almost never happens. What I will say is, who do they play next week? Hold on. Okay, they play the Rams. You could produce. You could put up numbers against them. You could do it to him. So he's definitely someone that I will be looking into more for the waiver wire rankings, which, again, go live tomorrow at noon. They are only available to Big Dog members, bdge.co. Go sign up, become a member. You'll get the waiver wire rankings. Jets, Broncos. Yeah, so Breece fucking Hall is back. I'm not going to lie. I was hesitant to believe that he was going to be unleashed because it just went from like, 8 carries a game, 10 carries a game to like, we're fully unleashing him. It's like, okay. I'll believe it when I see it. I fucking saw it. And Breece Hall Breece Hall looks like Devon Achane if he was 30 pounds heavier. Every time this dude touches the ball, it's a monster play. If you're giving him 20 carries, he's ripping off multiple 20 to 30-yard carries every game. It's insane. Ripped off a 72-yard touchdown run. Looked great. They fucking speedometered him up at 21 or 22 miles per hour, which was his pre-injury speed. So Breece seems to be fully back here, which is huge news for the Jets because they stink. But he does not stink. Breece is so good. Breece is immediately one of the best running backs in the NFL. And I think I will call my shot right now. I think Breece Hall is the 101 in fantasy drafts next year. Maybe C-Mac. Maybe that was a dumb statement. But I think we're going to see the pendulum swing back to running backs again. This year was a big wide receiver heavy year. And right now, I mean, it's sexy, right? It's Breece. Here's the thing. Like, they're not going to go into next year with Zach Wilson as their quarterback. We saw what they did targeting Aaron Rodgers. Like, they're just not going through that year again. They're not doing it again. So I expect at least a competent QB under center. Breece, C-Mac, Jay Jettas, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase again. Like, we got a lot of good options. Bijan, of course, but while Tyler Algier is there, I don't know if we'll ever see like Bijan really unlocked in the first couple of years, but that's for another conversation. Breece Hall, man, he's so good. He's in your lineup every week going forward, RB1. On the flip side, jaleel McLaughlin, really good. Had a really strong feeling about him this week, and he came out and performed. 12 touches, nearly 90 yards, scored a touchdown. This dude is also just a playmaker. Every time you turn the goddamn TV on, he's running for 20 yards. He's just a big-time playmaker in an offense that badly needs one. So, we'll have to see what happens with Javonte Williams. I kind of want to go as far. Like, Javonte's been so fucking mid up to this point, man. I remember there were discussions, like, after a few rookie games that Javonte was arguably more valuable than fucking Breece Hall in Dynasty. Javonte has looked so average this year. And that I will chalk up to the ACL for sure. He was someone that was definitely off our hit list based on how quickly he was returning. I kind of want to go out on a limb here as well and probably say that I feel like Jaleel will probably be the highest scoring fantasy running back in this backfield for the rest of the season. So if you picked him up last week, congrats. I think you got a real good one. I think at worst he's got his own role in this offense. I think Samaje and Javonte are kind of like redundant to each other. I think they'll take each other's carries and shit, but Jaleel's been used in the red zone. He's been used on the goal line. Like, Sean Payton loves this motherfucker, man. So he's startable. I really don't know if anyone else in this offense is actually startable. Patrick Mahomes, you could probably start in your fantasy lineups. He's pretty good. Travis Kelce hurt his ankle. Apparently, it is a low ankle sprain, so it's not anything to be too concerned about unless we hear otherwise, but he's good to go. Isaiah Pacheco, again, a dude that I was kind of saying buy low. He's looked better and better and now completely taken over the backfield, so he's really a nice start for you. I just don't think you could start anybody else in this offense. Rashee Rice seems to keep getting it done, but like on low volume, on low efficiency, so I'm not really like going out on a limb here to be super excited about him. I'll do a little bit more digging and research, and maybe I'll throw him a little bit higher up in the waiver wire rankings than I thought I would be originally. But again, stay tuned for those to drop tomorrow. On the flip side, Justin Jefferson pulled a hammy, and we don't know much yet, but I don't know. The vibes are not great. Like, we're not getting any word out of it that it's like minor or that it's not a concern or anything. Really just heard like we don't know much yet, which usually means they're looking into it a little bit deeper, which is not great. Hammies, they linger. They become problematic. He is very young, so he can recover from it quickly. And I think the re-injury risk on a dude that's 23 years old is going to be really, really low. But he might miss some time, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. If he misses time, Jordan Addison should be in like a great fucking spot to just kind of blow up and prove that first-round draft capital. But he was good in this one. Jefferson left, 9 targets, 6 catches, 64 yards, and a tugger. So he's startable. I don't think I would really start anybody else. KJ Osborne if you're like really, really in a pinch here. But this team's tough to get a grasp on. Madison did get in the end zone through the air, but in terms of like the backfield, him and Cam Akers starting to split backfield work pretty evenly right? Last week, Madison had his lowest share of opportunities and rushes and targets and all that kind of shit. And this week was even lower. So they are getting into a split that is really like if Madison doesn't get in the end zone, which is probably not going to happen on a week-by-week basis, he's giving you some shit numbers. So for right now, he's more of like a desperate flex play than anything else. Cowboys-Niners. This is a great one. This is another one I had on my slipper. I had Niners -3.5, I believe. Brock Purdy is just fucking so good, dude. Brock Purdy so good. Brandon Ayuk so good. Should have had another like 35-yard gain. Got called back from a holding call, whatever. I don't think there's anything I really need to talk about from the Niners side that we don't already know. On the Dallas side, Pollard's been such a disappointment in fantasy. I don't really care for the people that continue to say that his usage is so good, even though it wasn't great in this game. But like, oh, he's getting all this work and all that work, whatever. He's just probably not built for this workload, man. I think there was a reason they had Zeke there. I think there was a reason they continued to use Zeke. I think there was a reason for it, man. Tony Pollard is not getting it done on limited touches. Or on bigger workload, on more touches, I should say. Apologies. He's not scoring touchdowns. He's not making like huge plays like he did last year all the time. Obviously, this was against an extremely tough defense, so there are better days ahead. The Cowboys play against the Chargers, which Pollard should have a nice bounce back. The Rams, tough one against the Eagles. But a lot of the rest of the schedule is not overly tough. But I don't know. I might think about like over the next 4 weeks, 5 weeks, they've got some nice matchups. But towards the end of the season, it's Eagles, Bills, Dolphins kind of shit. But Lions are a really good run defense. Some tough matchups, man. I don't know. If you could still really sell on the Pollard name value, it's not something I would be super, super against. Because we were just doing the Best Ball Resurrection drafts last week, which are paid leagues. They're paid drafts. They're drafting as if we are playing the season from that point forward, which was just a few days ago. And Tony Pollard was a first-round pick in almost every one of those drafts. So if people are really out here spending money and using their first-round pick on Tony Pollard, and you can still get that value, I've really got no problem moving his ass. Because the Cowboys, they've just been up and down, man. They're clearly not anywhere in a tier with the Niners. I don't think anyone's in a tier with the Niners, Eagles included. I think if the Niners and the Eagles meet on a neutral field, I think the Niners win that game pretty handedly. So I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what else to yap about. Maybe we'll jump into the comments now. We got 800 people in here. We've got 92 thumbs up. How about we grow up? Hey. Ooh. Elijah Vera Tucker's out for the season. That's tough. Tough beat for the Jets. Ooh, okay. Dolphins coach said that Mike McDaniel said Devon Achane is being evaluated by the team's medical staff for a knee injury he sustained Sunday. Okay, so maybe it wasn't an ankle injury, but there was obviously something to what I was saying. So keep an eye on that. That's not good. What other updates do we have there? Gardner Minshew will start in Jacksonville. Yeah, obviously. Shane Steichen on Anthony Richardson. He does have an AC injury. He will miss some time. Don't know how much time right now yet. We know that as well. All right. What's going on, people? How are we? Just ignore the shit out of you for an hour. Twitter doctors saying MCL sprain for Achane. Okay. So they moved from the ankle to the ACL, but they did spot something there. I think his foot got planted in the turf and then it like kind of twisted. His leg kind of twisted, so that would make sense. MCL sprains are they're usually not that serious. Usually you could rest for about a week or two and then come back at relatively full strength. So it doesn't feel like it's something that's going to linger for quite a while, but he could definitely miss time. Good morning. Look at that profile picture. So professionally done. Such a TikToker you are. What else we got going on in here? Thoughts on CD? Yeah, I mean, again, CD's just one of those guys that like he's a low-end wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. So he's going to have his bad days, he's going to have his good days, and you kind of just take it what it is. That's just who he is, you know. He's still the number 1 target there for sure. He's still going to have big games, big explosive plays, all that kind of stuff. He was a dude that I was not necessarily like down on, but he was kind of my least favorite of those like first-round wide receivers. Not that any of them really like have exploded much besides the top guys, but you see what are y'all. What's the deal with Amon-Ra injury, sports hernia, or fake news? Definitely not fake news for the fact that he sat out, because that dude does not sit out. That dude plays through everything. So he was probably really hurting. I don't know if the team like made him sit out, because Dan Campbell's another dude that's like, I don't give a fuck, everybody get in the goddamn game. So yeah, probably something serious. I have no idea. I have no idea what his actual injury is, the core injury or whatever. I don't know the severity, but I'm sure it's hurting him. Like I said, I'm trying to tank in my Dynasty League and then start out 3-0, not sure what to do. That's the thing with Dynasty, man. That's the thing with fantasy football. Is like, you know, you might be someone who tanks, and then all of a sudden you're looking at your tanking ass team, and you got Tank. You got Tank Dell, and you got Nico Collins, and you've got all these tank-worthy players that are top 15, top 20 at their respective positions. You got Devon Achane, right? Like, you went all in on the rookie class this year, and you got some goddamn studs, and now you're competing. So, I don't know. Are you winning because all the teams that you're playing against are absolutely shit, or do you actually have a good team now? And also, is your idea of tanking just because you have your first? Have you been building up a bunch of firsts? Like, do you have 3 or 4 other firsts? Or is your idea of tanking like literally just because it'll make your pick better? If that's the case, fucking compete. We're out here trying to win games. We're out here trying to win leagues and win hardware. It's why you play the game. We play the game to pick up guys like Amari DiMarcado. It's why we play the game. You can't win with him. Breece, top 10 PPR running back rest of the season. Hell yeah. Did you see that man play yesterday? Good Lord. Lord. All right, I'm going to dip off. Thank you guys for hanging out during the stream. Again, make sure you go cop that Jordan Love line. 0.5 total yards. All he's got to do is complete a pass tonight. Use promo code BDG, and that square will appear for you, okay? 0.5 total yards, and you're a winner on Underdog. It is linked down below, first thing in the description. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I will be back here next Monday morning as well, so get your notifications on, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you tomorrow for the waiver wire video and waiver wire rankings.